The lady doesn't see the man, or they see something short period. I mean, they marry without see each other. I mean,
they used to the families, for example, they used to be neighbors, and they had kids. They decided, okay, we're gonna marry our kids. You know, kind of like an Islamic way. So when I hear people talking about Mexicans or Hispanics as Americans, and don't get me wrong, I like America. This is a very, very good country, but it's not the same. Our culture is not the same. So that's when my husband told my mother-in-law that she was marrying me, and he told her where I was from. They thought, oh, she's American. You know, she's American, she's going to divorce at the first problem they had, she's gonna do things like this. But this is not, I'm not an American, I'm Mexican, so my culture is different.
Okay, this was interesting. Then let's come to your working period. After that, did you work somewhere after the college?
After college, I work in this factory. I worked there for 2 years. Then after that, I met my husband, and then things happened so fast. I didn't work, and I have not worked since I came to the U.S.
Before you became a Muslim, what was your knowledge about Islam and Muslims, and then you start the story about converting?
Before I was Muslim, I didn't really know about Islam. The only thing I knew about Islam was about the news, you know, the beatings of women in Saudi Arabia, that women in Saudi Arabia are not allowed to drive. At that time, it was around 1890s, there was a movie by Sally Field called Not Without My Daughter. And it was about this American married an Iranian. And then, you know, he's very nice here in the U.S. He's the perfect husband. But once everybody moves to Iran, it's totally a bad thing for her. He beats her up. He treats her bad. He makes her wear the burqa. So it was that give us that bad side of Islam. So that's what I knew about Islam. I didn't knew any Muslims. I didn't knew any person out of Mexico, to tell you the truth. The only one was my sister-in-law, which is from Panama, which is also Latin America. So I didn't know anything accurate about Islam. I only knew the bad part. So then I met my husband.
Converting story.
Oh, okay. So I'm in college. I stopped working, and at this time, my life, it's a party. College, it's party. You go to school, then weekends is, you know, you go party with your friends, and that was my life. And one of those parties, one of my classmates from college had a birthday in his house, so we went, and he also worked in a factory that my husband visited from the U.S. And that's, I think it's just destiny, or, you know, like Allah's will. I think that's what it was, because my husband was going to go somewhere else. But the person that was going to take him somewhere else stood him up. So then he called my friend, asked him, hey, what are you doing? It's like, you know, I cannot go out. I have a party in my house. Do you want to come over? Engineering in my country is a man's thing. There's not many women. The percentage of women in engineering is very low. So then my husband asked him, how many girls is there? He was also a single guy. How many girls is there? And the guy said, oh, like, you know, 5. He's like, oh. He's like, okay, I have nothing to do. I'm already ready. I'm just gonna go. And he's like, okay. So then he came to the house, to the party. And that's how I met him. And for some reason, I don't know, I think it's just Allah's plan that I had always been very good in English subject. English as a second language was always my ace. So I had, some knowledge of English. He didn't speak any Spanish. So we started, this conversation, and he had to leave the next day. So we just exchanged numbers and left. And at that time, I as a non-Muslim, I was dating. I was, going to parties, and, I met other guys and stuff like that. And so, it was just like another guy that I met in the party and gave me his number, and that's it. Well, like about a week later, he called me. And so then we started talking. And we started talking and talking and talking. And we talked so much during 1 month that his bill came up to $600 in 1 month. Because we talked for like hours on the phone. Then he said, I'm gonna come back. Can I see you? And I said, okay. I said, but you know what? If you want to see me, you're gonna have to come to my house and pick me up. And let me tell you something. In that party, I always go out with my friends, very close friends or cousins. I had never really go out with guys to a discotheque or live in a party with a guy. Because that's not how we are. That's not how we are. We always protect each other. We go in a group of girls and come back in that same group of girls. Nobody goes with anybody. That night, it was the first time that I leave the party with somebody, and that one was my husband. And I don't know why. My friends asked me, "Are you sure? Call us as soon as you get home." And I'm like, "Yeah, I think it'll be okay." So he took me home. I had to teach him some manners because as an American, I guess dealing with American ladies, he just parked the taxi cab, stopped, and he's like, "Okay, well, bye." And I'm like, "Bye? You have to walk me to my door." I said, "You don't just say bye. You have to walk me to my door and wait until I get in, and then you can go." So then he was like, "Oh, okay, I'm sorry." So then he did. So that's one of the things that, being, I guess, only girl, my brothers and my dad had always taught me that the guys have to, they have to work for you if they really want you. So that was, it was just funny. I always say that because he now he's very different dealing with my family and our culture. But at that time, he was like, "Okay, well, bye." I'm like, you have to take me. So after that, we start calling and talking and everything. And then when he came to my house. So he said, "Yeah, no problem. I'll come to your house. I meet your parents. I don't have any problem with that." So he came and brought presents for me, flowers. So my parents were ecstatic. They were so happy. But they didn't like the age difference. My husband is 13 years older than me. And, at that time I was 20. So we went out, we went to the mall, we went to eat. He treated me very nice. Everything was very good. So we repeat this almost every month at the point that we got to fall in love, actually. And during this time, I've seen him pray. He practiced. He is very practicing Muslim. He's a modern Muslim, but he practiced. So the first time I saw him pray, I felt so like I didn't belong there. Like I was an intruder on his prayer. So then I asked him, "What is that you're doing?" He said, "Well, I'm praying." I said, "Why are you praying?" "Well, I'm Muslim." And I said, "What is that?" So then he explained to me. And at that time, it was the craze. In my country, I started the craze of the personal computers. And so he brought me one from here. My family is not, they're not rich. My family were not, we couldn't afford a computer, that's for sure, at that time. So he took the effort to bring a computer to my place so I could communicate with him. I could still do, college, and that's how I started learning more about Islam. So then he brought me books, and at this time, I learned about Islam, but I also wanted to study my own religion because I didn't want to commit to something that I was not knowledgeable enough, and also because I didn't know enough about my own religion. I just knew what they tell you in church. So I started going to church, listening to the sermons, and reading the Bible. Then I learned there's a difference between the Old Testament and the New Testament, and that difference is Jesus. That's everything changes after Jesus is crucified. And then I discovered that the Old Testament is actually almost the same as the Quran. They have the same characters, the same history and stories. So I found that very peculiar, and that made it the transition for me to believe on what Islam, the basis of Islam, was easier because of that. So of course, when I started going to church more often, my mom was so pleased. And another thing that she liked is that Muslims do not drink, right? So if my husband will take me out, she knows we were not going to drink, because in my country, there's no party if there's no drinking. So that's, it can be a child's birthday party, but you're gonna find alcohol in that party. So that's something that they loved, that there was no drinking when we go out. Of course, no drugs, things like that. So they feel pretty secure, having me to go with him. So when I convert, I think I got my husband out of, I caught him by surprise. Because what I told him, I said, I have learned about Islam, I have read, I have compared, and I even talked to the priest in my church. I asked questions that he could not answer, that Quran answer. So I think I want to be a Muslim. And he said, are you sure? And he's like, yeah, I'm pretty sure that I want to be a Muslim. We were already 6 months into a relationship. We were boyfriend and girlfriend. And so I said, I do really like it. I do really enjoy the straight, the religion is so straightforward. There's no around, it tells you, you do this, you don't do this, and that's it. And the Catholicism is not like that. You just, they never answer you the questions. You just stay okay. So what is the reason for kneeling in the church? Oh, you just have to kneel. That's the way it is. You don't have to ask. And in Islam, they will explain to you why you don't drink, why you have to cover, why you have to, not eat pork, right? So that's what I liked. So when I decided, I told him, and he's like, okay. So my first shahada was with him, just me and him. I became Muslim, just like that. And after that, we decided that we were going to get engaged. And he was very afraid because his family didn't know completely that I had become Muslim. And he's from Bangladesh, and they're very traditional Muslims. So, and particularly in his family, my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law, they have been arranged marriage. So they were expecting him to be an arranged marriage too. At that time, his dad was very, very sick. He was already in the, time of passing away. And so he said, I don't want to tell nothing to anybody. I want to wait because I don't want to bring something else to the plate. Everybody's dealing with my dad's disease and the fact that he's going to pass any time. So I said, okay. He went to see his parents. before his dad passed away. And I was so scared because I know how important a promise is in Islam. When you promise something, you have to do it. Otherwise, it stays there like you didn't do it. So I was so afraid that his dad will make him promise that he will marry somebody from there. I never had those rushes, nervous rushes, but during that trip, those 2 weeks that he was there, I break in rushes because I was so afraid. His dad was in deathbed, and knowing him, I know he was not going to break a promise like that. So I was just praying and praying and praying that please just don't ask him something like that. So alhamdulillah, he came back and everything was good. He didn't have to promise anything. So after that, we decided to arrange the wedding, and his mom didn't know. His family didn't know because he knew that he will tell them. It will complicate more the situation. So we just decided to get married in Mexico. We found a mosque in Mexico City. That was 1999 when we found the mosque, and we got married in 2000. We got married in 2000, June 2000, and I got pregnant right away. So our plans were getting married, move to the U.S., go to school, and then have babies. But then we got married, get pregnant. I had to stay in Mexico for my whole pregnancy because my brother would not allow me to come here. I don't know anybody. This is a different country. They were not pleased by the fact that I was stepping my foot down to come here with him and marry him. So they said, okay, at least you have to stay for the pregnancy, and then we'll see what you're gonna do. They were still planning on convincing me not to come here. So my marriage was an Islamic marriage, but for my family didn't count. For my family, I was not married because it was not a Catholic marriage. So